I find that I'm so touched by seeing you all come together to practice with us. And especially when I think that this practice is not for the faint hearted, right? Opening our hearts to all of the joys and sorrows, especially in these days, is not easy. There are just so many things that can knock us off balance. And we all know them, whether it's war or climate change or political rhetoric or death or loss or grief. We're consciously making the effort to keep our hearts open and to look towards these places that are so difficult. And it takes courage. I think sometimes we forget this, but it's so important to honor ourselves and to take a moment and remember that this practice of opening and accepting takes courage. And I'm not talking about the courage that implies grit and forbearance that, pushes and kind of bulldozes forward, or the courage that has a sense of bravado in it. I think of this more as gentle, open-eyed courage that faces reality with an open heart, that stays connected and engaged in the face of incredible challenges. It's that kind of courage. So I hope you can kind of remind yourself of that now and again. As a kid, I didn't have the tools, and I especially didn't have this practice. And so I suppressed a lot of the feelings around things that were really difficult, excuse me. There was no way I had the capacity to face them. And, really, thank goodness I did suppress them so I could survive. My heart was protecting me. But as an adult, those same habits that protected me were just not satisfying. And I felt closed off and longed for a sense of connection. My guess is that many of you share this feeling, right? We all want to live fully. We all want to show up for our lives. And that, I think, is one of the reasons that we came to this path. And so I come back to the fact that it takes courage to live this way. There's a vulnerability in it. And through this year, we've looked at each of the Brahma Viharas, and we know that it takes warmth and kindness and a bit of willingness to open our hearts to more suffering and more joy. And in my mind, equanimity is the most challenging of the Brahma Viharas. Accepting things as they are. Resting with just this, as Ajahn Sucitto says, or it's like this, nothing other than this, which is what Ajahn Sumedho says. Take your hands off the steering wheel, as Bill says. Letting things be as they are. Can you feel the vulnerability in this? The little bit of letting go of control? It can feel a little scary. So, sometimes we'll have big events in our lives, and it's so obvious to us that we can't control them. We can't change the outcome. And something deep inside of us surrenders and accepts and comes to balance with it. I have very dear friends who lost their only child right before the pandemic. 29 years old, seemingly perfectly healthy, happy, fun guy, and he died. And his parents were devastated, of course. And over the next few years, even now, it's a process. They have turned towards every difficult feeling and every pain, and they've let friends and family hold them and be in it with them. And when conversation moves towards the what ifs, right? What if we were there? What if he had been to the doctor? And their response is always, it makes no difference. The outcome will not change. There's no reason for what ifs. And instead, they rest in the reality of just this, no matter how painful. So now they call their lives the best, second best. Of course, they'd prefer if their son was alive. And they've created so much love and connection among a group of people, including their son's friends. And I think it's because they were willing to face just this. What teachers they are, surrendering to this new reality in their lives. But ironically, in a way, there are all these other things that are maybe a bit more mundane that we much more easily react to, that are harder for us to accept. Think about traffic, working with computers, loud people, things as simple as the bug on my arm or something buzzing in my ear. These are the things that irritate us, and they get under our skin, or they make us angry. Or it's the boring things, the long line at the grocery store, where we have a tendency to space out. It's in these kind of situations where we really want things to be different, and we can't quite settle with what's happening, and we become really reactive. Maybe we're lashing out at the person who cut us off in traffic. And for me, I know that especially happens when I'm in the privacy of my own car. Or we're blaming the person that disturbed our quiet time. Or judging the person who slowed up the grocery line as if they were the problem. We find so many strategies to resist the reality and to try to change the uncomfortable places, instead of realizing that much of that discomfort comes from our reaction to what's happening. Equanimity is actually asking us to let go of the resistance, even if for just a moment, and to find some compassion for ourselves, and then let things be. Just be in the traffic jam or the grocery line. Sink into it. Give it space and let it unfold. So here's another example where I think many of us get caught. We like to give advice and we like to fix problems. We're problem solvers. And generally our motives are good, but if we're honest, it's likely that we're uncomfortable with the way things are. We don't like unresolved issues, and whether it's our own or someone else's pain, we want to resolve it, right? My brother lives alone in a small apartment in a city a distance away from me. And I don't see him often, but we talk a lot. And he has some challenges that he lives with, and people always try to guide him, give him advice, support him. My dad did this so often that it became a family joke. We would ask him not to give us advice. So he would start many sentences with, I don't want to give you any advice, but, and then proceed to give us advice. So it was all well-intentioned, but I can feel my brother close up and shut down when advice is given. He doesn't want it. He wants to be listened to and heard. And of course, I want the same thing. I think we all know that. And yet it can be so difficult for me to hold his struggle and not try to change it, to just let it be. This is the way it is. When we love someone, it's especially hard to accept their suffering, right? Just this. So equanimity is really asking us to keep our hearts engaged and let go of wanting things otherwise, which means letting go of controlling or fixing or advising or tolerating even. My husband describes the first time he went rappelling off of a mountain. And that first moment when you have to step off the edge of the cliff onto the side of the mountain, there's a letting go, and it feels insecure, and it takes courage. Letting go and resting in just this takes courage. And we have to conjure it up over and over. We wobble in and out of finding equanimity all the time. But we can practice with it. And we can practice to let go of that reactivity. And over time, more easily and more quickly, we'll find peace. Thich Nhat Hanh looks to the Buddha's face to remind him and inspire him about the possibility of equanimity. So listen to what he says. When I was a novice, I could not understand why, if the world is filled with suffering, the Buddha has such a beautiful smile. Why isn't it he's disturbed by all the suffering? Later, I discovered that the Buddha has enough understanding, calm, and strength. That's why the suffering doesn't overwhelm him. He's able to smile to suffering because he knows how to take care of it and to help transform it. We need to be aware of the suffering, but retain our clarity, calmness, and strength so that we can help transform the situation. That's why the Buddha's smile is possible. So I think maybe we can bring that smile to mind too to help us. So when I say thank you for your practice, which I frequently end these talks with, I really mean it, because I know it's not easy. So I thank you for your courage to take on this practice and to come sit with us each day.